Welcome to In the Zone. I am Craig Zimmerman, and we are now on In the Zone number 28 here. And we are with another one of our strong educators from, we'll call it the South End, Mr. Andy Scheel. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So this is the first ever where we had a father and son on In the Zone.
I was wondering if that was going to be the case. You know, how flattering. I know my dad is David Scheel, was the real Scheel of the community, still is. He was one of the first guys, so it's really an honor to be able to come and follow up with him.
So I know most of the answers to all these questions, and as I said to you, there's no secret here, and we know, as I say, you're not going to be stumped with any of them. But tell us where you were born and raised and your family.
May 22nd, 1974. And what is now referred to as East China, I think on my birth certificate it says St. Clair. I was born at River District Hospital, so I'm a true local.
Okay.
Parents had moved here a few years prior to that. Dad became a counselor at Marine City High School. Mom was working first for foster drugs, and then eventually started working at River District Hospital.
Okay.
And I know they briefly lived above the Apple Corps foster drugs at that time for Mr. Durenbach and those guys. And then we moved to 3rd Street. I lived on 3rd Street. It's now a little yellow house. It was like a blue house when I lived there, right by Dairy Queen, right across from the drive-through. And eventually over to 304 North Main Street, which is, a hallowed house in this community. It was the home of the Galvin family prior to my parents buying it from Bill Galvin Sr. So, and that's where I was, from the time I was born right up through the early 90s.
And your father and mother still live there?
They still live there. Yeah. They still live there, yes they do.
Yeah. So your dad did football for, 30 years, I don't know how long, a long time. And we went through his whole history. Now, you went to Marine City High School. Tell us about it. Yeah,
well, it started, and he would be able to articulate it a lot better than I can, but it started when he was very much in the Craig Zimmerman mold at WSMA Radio AM 1590, which is, now part of the Marine City Nursery.
Yeah.
And it was he and Jack Dragmiller and Tom Somerville, and then eventually Jerry Bissett, who came on, and I would be the tag-along guy. That was my indoctrination to high school football in the area, which was first, Marine City and Holy Cross games, because he always did those ones.
How old would you have been then? You think?
Oh, I remember being 5, 6 years old. So this was in the 70s still. I do not remember the 1970, 1980 area where Marine City had to shut down football for a year because of millage issues, and that's when they turned the lights off at the stadiums and the school stadiums. But it was in and around there. And then by the time I got to be probably around 4th, 5th grade, Coach Workentine was good enough to let me come around and be like a water boy.
Okay.
And I got to kind of mull around and do some of those things. And I kind of be a water boy for the 1985 team.
Okay.
And I remember I was in 6th grade and going, we're going to do this, all the guys,
now
went to Washington Elementary at that time.
Were those the days that the games were played on Saturday afternoon at Ward Cottrell?
Most time Friday.
Okay.
But at 4 o'clock. And it was really a glorious time because we got out at 3:20 at the elementaries.
So you just stayed.
And we took the walk, down Mary Street, to 29 and stopped at the dry dock to get some, a New York seltzer or something like that, walk down to Ward Street to the game and get a ride home with my dad. It was cool.
Okay. So you were a water boy, and then you went on to play football.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I did. I was fortunate enough to be a Mariner. I went on and, started my career with Marv Osterlin and Ed Yaks in the 8th grade, and then on to Coach Gerens and Westerhoff in the 9th grade, and it dates me a little bit, Coach Rombach and Coach Glodich of the JV.
Right.
And then I was on varsity. My 2 primary years of varsity football were 1990 and 1991, which were playoffs teams 2 and 3 in Marine City history. So we got to be those next guys, which was really cool.
Was Jerry still the coach?
Nope, Coach
Okay.
Bob was the guy.
Okay.
Coach Bob came in 1987. I'm part of the first Coach Bob class that was
Okay.
all Coach Bob. When we were in 8th grade, which was football started at that time
Sure.
in the 8th grade, Coach Bob was his first year at Marine City.
So tell us about those beginning years from the aspect that, we talked about it with a lot of different people, whether it be your dad or with Larry Rombach or Bob himself. We had Bob in here. And you look at those scenarios of that, I call it the era that Jerry Warkentine and Bill Amiel set the stone. They put
And
the
they
foundation.
absolutely did.
Yeah. Then you have Bob come to town carrying on, but also setting a new standard.
Oh, yeah.
So how's that as an 8th grader?
We started seeing more black things start coming in, like, oh, wow, look at the varsity's wearing black pants. And, most of the guys, at least the ones that for sure carry the football, have black arm pads. And then when I was in 9th grade, the big splash happened because that's when East China Stadium opened.
Right.
And, this beautiful facility that we have, and for St. Clair and us, how proud we were to have it. We still are.
Yes.
To have that stadium, and, all black uniform with orange last names on them.
Right.
And going, things are really happening here.
Yeah.
We can be identified by our last name on a jersey now.
Yeah.
And, they look sharp, and things started to uptick and really hold from where Coach Warkentine had the program in those late 80s.
Yes. So now,
Or early middle 80s, sorry.
so now you played what position?
I played defensive line primarily. This was in an era where Coach Braun's teams in Marysville
Yes.
had long established the two platooning, which, what two platoon means basically is you really play primarily one side of the football. Maybe you're trained on both sides of the football
Right.
as a support emergency player, backup player on one side, but primarily on one side of the football. And I went to initially I was an offensive lineman, defensive lineman kind of going through program. And then, it was in August of 1990. I was, trying to become a center, and it was a little slow acclimation to that. And before I knew it, I was told to go with the defense, and that's where I wound up. And I got to play for the great Bill Amiel. He was my
Yes.
position coach, and that's a true legend of the community. And played on state championship basketball team, state championship game basketball teams
Right.
in the 50s, and just a great teacher and coach.
Yep.
One of the reasons I wanted to become a social studies teacher was Bill Amiel.
Okay.
And that was just a phenomenal experience with my friends and teammates.
So you get into high school, then you play for Bob and you play for Bill, and you take the team to new heights. Your classes do.
Yeah, I mean, and it was really the class before me, the class of 1991, which is, Chief Jim Heslop, David Walker, Coach Rob Tenyer of Morehead State, Chuck Daniel, late Vaughn Allegreen, John Meegan. I don't want to leave names
Right,
out,
right.
Frank Clemente, I'll name one more. That really, those kids had always kind of won a little bit more
Sure.
than the 1992 class did, and really sports across the board.
Sure.
And they had some swagger and some they, as seniors, they had been through it. It was a good year the year before, but a tough year, and a year that everyone expected Marine City to make the playoffs for the first time since 1985, and it didn't happen. And that crew really showed us a lot of leadership and camaraderie. That I know the 1992 class had some great players in itself with Matt Kloss, Brian Recor, Chris Gabler, Mike Simic. I'll stop there to not.
So let me
destroy
take
names,
out a
but-
word you said and have you explain this to me and the
Yep.
viewers.
Yep.
Leadership. Explain that.
Leadership doesn't necessarily mean you have a captaincy on your jersey, or you're the head coach, or a varsity assistant, or anything like that. Leadership is really being able to make the person that's to your left and to your right believe in you and want to be with you. And I really think that's, with those two pieces, there's different types of leaders. But if you want to be around this person, if you're magnetized towards this person or these people, and you like to be around them.
I hear us standing up in my arm here.
Well, hey,
Who's the king of that? Who is the king of that in your realm of what the leadership issue?
The king of that currently?
Yeah. Well, no, the one that in your life that did that.
Well, Dad,
Yep.
Really taught me what loyalty means, and to not be afraid to stand up for what you believe in.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so blessed with both my parents. My mom's my dad's from Detroit. Okay,
Right.
He's from the east side of Detroit. My mom's from a town on the west side of the state called Wayland, Michigan, which is really very, very similar to Marine City. And she grew up very, generational. Everybody lived in there. So Marine
Right.
City, she soaked Marine City in real quick.
Yep, yep.
Where she got Marine City real quick and is a fabric of this community now too. So those were them. But Coach Bob for me
That's what I thought.
is, I cannot say
He's
enough.
sort of like-
I am here today talking to you because of that.
He is sort of like your General Patton leading them into battle.
Yep, and he would never,
Right, he's so humble.
He never would, but I mean, the things that man did in his life.
Right.
Volunteering for a draft.
Right.
And it didn't have to do that. By 1969, I think they were starting to slow things down.
Right.
He volunteered, and then went to college, and then became a head coach at a very young age, up in the thumb,
Right.
of a program that really had kind of was a second, third fiddle at that time.
Yep.
And then got them to the 8-1, 9-0s.
Right.
And then came to Marine City and was really, I think, the guy that changed things from orange and black
Right.
to black and orange. and got everyone to buy in to
Yes.
the Marine City mantra.
Yes. And he's a very humble guy,
Yes.
and he doesn't want to take any credit for it. It's like my comment to Bob was, Bob, you must know that your handprint and fingerprint is all over this. And he says, I had something to do with it.
Yeah. He knows.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
he knows,
Yeah.
but I mean, at the same time, he knows that he never would have gotten it to go as far if it weren't for a Tony Scarselli,
Right.
for a Ron Glodich, for a Larry Rombach.
Surround yourself
Yeah,
with
but,
good people.
Tim Gerrans,
Yeah.
Bill Amiel, all the other assistants,
Sure.
that have come through, and to get the kids understood that kind of humble. I mean, he was a fiery guy.
Yes.
Especially in those younger days. Anyone that came through the program that played for, maybe some of that kind of thing went on. I'm not sure. I can't remember. But those guys were young. I mean, Coach Bob was in his early 30s. Glodich and Scarselli were in their 20s.
Yes.
So I mean, we definitely got the fired up version of the deal.
So after you're done with high school, where did you go?
I went right out of high school to Western Michigan. That's where my parents went. So I had a grandfather that went there and some aunts and uncles. It's kind of the legacy, I guess, university for my family. So I went to Kalamazoo, and a bunch of Marine City folk at that time came out to Kalamazoo too, and it was a riot. At times it was Marine City West.
Yeah.
Just a little bit further down 94.
Yeah.
We'd hang out a lot together and those kinds of things. And after about 3 years of college, I decided to change things right away. I wanted to become a teacher and a coach. And I started throwing my name out to ADs, just, letter in the mail.
Right.
This is pre-email or
Yeah.
texting on a phone or posting on social media. So, and lo and behold, Pete Scrummerhorn from Portage Northern reached back out to me, called me out for I guess a sit and a meet to see how things would go. And I was named a varsity assistant coach, never had coached before. And then they came to me and said their middle school coach had backed out. The middle school program had been shut down for 3 years. Would you be interested in running that program? Sure. I mean, I've never put a whistle around my neck in my life. But I did that for 3 years, and then eventually coached JV at Portage Northern and taught student taught and long-term subbed in the Portage Public Schools. And then I actually worked in my first year in the Paw Paw Public Schools. The city's so nice, they named it twice. But still coached at Portage Northern. And then started communicating with another connection through Marine City, which was Jim Scarselli, who at that time was just taking the reins as the head coach at Clintondale High School. And I applied for a job and didn't get it. Okay. And it went to another guy that I worked with, a dear friend of mine and colleague. And so I came back out to Portage and Paw Paw for another year, and then I got a call randomly over the summer. Another position opened up. Would you be interested? I was ready to come back to the east side. And I wound up at Clintondale High School, and I wound up as a social studies teacher there and a football coach and a baseball coach for 13 years prior to.
So you did the varsity football for 13 years?
Yep, at
Okay, and it was a
Clintondale,
while.
yep.
So tell us, how is that to coach against your alma mater?
You know, I am not the only one that's ever done it.
Right, right.
There's been many other. Your nephew,
Right.
you know, Kyle had
Yep.
a great little era and series of playoff battles
Yep.
with the Mariners when he was, you know, running Notre Dame prep. You know, I know like Tim McConnell, I think's coached at St. Clair, and there's been others.
Sure.
There's been others. There's now there are.
Yeah.
And it was interesting.
Yeah.
It was interesting to kind of, you know, my interactions with Coach Bob and Scar and
Right.
those guys. Hey, how you doing? You know, talking, you know, and all of a sudden, you know, hey, how you doing? You know, kind of
Yeah.
treatment before games, and you know, loving the cannon, loving the Jolly Roger flags running around the stadium, going, oh, that damn cannon, that, you know,
Right.
you know, oh, I wish these guys with the flags would get out of our way, and you know. But no, I never was really like that. I never forgot where I came from. But it was tough because I was in the booth,
Right.
you know, at Clintondale a lot of the time. And when you come to East China Stadium, here's my dad,
Right,
who
right,
is
yeah.
now the stadium announcer. You know, pro Mariner, go Mariner,
right.
go Mariner, and you know.
You
and-
guys sort of split his allegiance a little.
well, he did. He did. You know, when it was a non-Mariner game, you know, he came with his Clintondale hat on and to Cipher Line Stadium and those kinds of things. But he was, you know, he's a Mariner. You know,
I've said this probably 100 times in these shows I've done. I said, I can't remember what I had for lunch yesterday, but I can remember specific games. I can remember a 7-6 game down at
yeah, that was before my time. I was still in Portage, but that was a game. You know, I coached against Marine City 15 times.
Right.
And it was 2-13. You know,
Yeah.
and I was just a small part, you know,
Right.
of that staff, just like I am now. But and I remember them clear as day. We won at Clintondale 6-0,
Right. There you go.
and then we won.
Was that the cold one?
No, that was game 2 of that year.
Okay.
That was game 2 of that year. It was we both had great years, but that's one that we won, and then we had in 2008, right after the 2007 state championship team.
Oh yeah.
We had 2 phenomenal games.
Yes. Yes.
Where we had one that was seesaw back and forth, and Alleman caught a
Playoff
touchdown
game and yeah.
in the end zone with like around 20 seconds left.
I want to
and
say
then
the
we
first
won
game.
the playoff game. The Clintondale won the playoff
That's what it
game.
was. Yeah. Yeah. It was a flip flop. Marine City won the first one. Clintondale won the second one.
Yeah, and then the second game was equally as entertaining, back and forth, back and forth.
Yeah.
And those were those 2 times, and you know, to call those I mean, and that's how special the program is, because when teams, you know, and I'm being part of another program, when you beat Marine City,
Yeah.
you know, that one circled.
Right.
You know, that was a big year. That was a big win.
Right, right.
And those certainly were for Clintondale too.
Yeah. 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 So, tell us about. Here's one thing. Okay. How in the heck did you marry up so good, so well?
Yes, my wife's Dr. Lisa Scheel, who's, you know, just down the road here, works for Assumption St. John. Very, very lucky. You know, I know it's like $850 million. I'm not playing that Mega Millions because I won my lottery 22 years ago, Craig.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I married my wife, and you know, we met at the Clintondale High School gym. Her mom,
I heard that story.
was
Go
a
tell it.
secretary.
Yeah.
And I was coming back to work a basketball game, you know, just crowd control and those kinds of things. And I was there, you know, just kind of, you know, looking around, and you know, my mother-in-law Bev, who's a secretary and really involved in Clintondale, you know, brought her daughter there. And you know, I met her under the one door, and we talked and that kind of thing. And the next thing we sort of made plans. And then 3 years later, you know, I was working a hitting camp because I was a baseball coach too at one time, and you know, she needed to come up for something like that, and you know, I proposed to her in that very same spot about 3 years later in Clintondale High School. So you know, Clintondale is very important to me.
Sure, sure.
You know, I mean, I did not hesitate at the opportunity when the opportunity arose to come back to East China and be part of the community again. And you know, I didn't, you know, hesitate. You know, I didn't hesitate. I was all in on that opportunity. But Clintondale is a real important place to me.
Sure, sure. Now, how many years have you been back now?
So I came back in August of 2012.
Okay.
I got hired at the very beginning, you know, right when school was about ready to start. So I actually coached in 2012. My first game of the year was Lamphere versus Clintondale, And game 2 for me was Marine City versus Sterling Heights. So I don't know how many people have coached for 2 different programs in the same year. I have. So I've been back since 2012.
Okay.
So this is going, I guess, on year 11, 10 years.
Yeah. You know, like everything else in life, I was going to guess 6. But
They go so fast.
Yes.
Feels like 6.
So you got 2 children, and they're pretty busy and active.
Yes, I do.
Tell us about them.
Yeah, my son David is 16 and is going to be a junior in high school, and my daughter Nadia is 13 and is going to be in the 8th grade. And we live out in Shelby Township. Things happen so fluidly that back when this happened, neither one of us ever envisioned coming in and working out in the area, that it would just, you know, things kind of got lost in translation, and we were never able to bring ourselves back out to the area, which we would have liked to have done. So they go to Eisenhower, Mallow, which is, you know, different than the Marine City, St. Clair, you know, just these big, you know, huge community high schools.
Sure.
And you know, they're proud, and they have their fun, and they have their friends, and they have their life, and they love it. But you know, it isn't quite the same experience that you have in the small town, which I would love to have provided. But
well, the timing of everything too sometimes is somewhat of an issue, and we know how that can be.
But yeah, my son's a football player for Eisenhower and is going to be a junior on the varsity this year. So things move real fast, you know. And when you have kids, you know I'm not saying anything new there. But
right.
Yeah.
So now you're coaching now and handling what?
I work with the defense.
Okay.
And when I first came back to Marine City, it was kind of, you know, it was very unexpected. Like I said, I came during the season, so I kind of just jumped in and helped Matt Pollock and Dave Osterland and Dave Frent with the defense in 2012. And just sort of slotted in with them those first couple of years. And then there was a little bit of a transition where I was working with Darren Letson and Ron Glodich on the offense for about a year and a third. And then I came back to the defensive side, and Dave Frent and I, along with Jim Heslop, Dave Osterland over the past, and then now Tony Scarcelli's coming back, are working with the defense. So I work with the varsity level. Okay.
And give us some defining moments as a teacher, coach, parent.
Well, you know, I have some, and you know, I want to, you know, it's hard to pick just one. You know, I have a
pick
student.
2 or 3.
I have a student from Clintondale that was a refugee from Bosnia and did not speak English when she came here at the age of 13. And she, you know, a lot of folks, you know, in the Bosnian community at that time, which was late 90s, we're talking, you know, Kosovo war, that we had a lot coming in. And Hamtramck was an area that a lot of them had settled. Well, you know, Hamtramck, that's not your 1950s Hamtramck.
Right.
So this girl learned to speak English, and, you know, lo and behold, she, you know, very quickly, very articulate, very interested in media. She was a senior in high school. She on the weekends was doing traffic and weather for WJLB Radio 97.9 and is now one of the lead anchors of the Fox affiliate in Washington, D.C. So that's a person that I always think of.
What's her name?
You know, Vildana Puric.
Okay.
You know, Sunny in the Morning was her show. And, you know, that's an amazing accomplishment, you know, for somebody. You know, that was real defining. I got to be part of something, you know, that was kind of a real early precursor to what had to be used during the pandemic, which was online education, which is this process of taking what your lessons and putting them on video. And being able to provide that to students so that your teaching is recording and you're able to help individual students more specifically in the classroom setting, called the flipped classroom. And the principal that I was working with at Clinton was really interested in starting that. I gave it a shot and got some, you know, real positive results with that. And it's kind of grown on into, you know, something that you see a little bit more regularly in education. And it's not dissimilar to what the ECVA is now. And that was something that was kind of early on. I in no way am like a Steve Jobs to this thing or anything, but you know, that was real defining. And then, you know, being able to come back to Marine City and St. Clair and, you know, have kids go to MIT, you know, see kids get scholarships to wonderful places, you know, be part of a St. Clair high school staff, because I've been a counselor at St. Clair as well, that sent 12 kids to the University of Michigan one year.
Wow.
You know, something else. Seeing the Jared Tobies come through. And, you know, we're now part of the Tigers organization, and you know, back at Marine City with kids getting into the service academies, and it's just been a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful ride.
Sure. Tell us a little bit about your position at the high school as a counselor. Now, everybody knows or has talked to a counselor, but tell us most of what your day's filled with.
Well, I'm actually at the middle school.
Okay.
So I'm at Marine City Middle School, and you know, high school counseling and middle school counseling are very different. You know, high school, you know, it's credit driven. You have to earn your credits to graduate. Your GPA becomes cumulative, and for those that are interested in college, you know, that's obviously something they want to kind of build upon. Those kids that are interested in the vocational setting, we want to really get them connected, you know, with things like the, you know, tech up, you know, at RISA, or, you know, even our signatories, our local signatories like Cordis Brothers and those kinds of things that will take kids on and put them into their to their work setting that they have ultimately do. And there's no better feeling for a counselor at that level at the high school level when you are able to guide and work with somebody and get them to their goal. And is great. With middle school, it's what we call a lot more social emotional learning. That we work on, and you know, we're cultivating students and studentship and accountability and responsibility and organization and things like that are you know, vital keys to success in high school. And it's a process, you know, for the most of them, you know, we need those 3 years to kind of get there. And I really enjoyed and have enjoyed being at the middle school level. I've been at the high school probably at the crux of the length of my career the majority of the time. But the middle school the last 5 years or so, and the rewards are different but wonderful and the same. And to see the growth, the exponential growth you see in kids.
That was going to be my next question. You probably then see some of those kids coming from 7th, 8th, 9th, and then you see them again in 10th or whatever grade it is in football or whatever it might be.
Absolutely, yeah. Even just in the hallways and passing, if you're not an athlete. You see this totally different person, this adjusted person, this person that, you know, meets all these benchmarks of where you know would want them to be socially, emotionally, intellectually, and they're guided. And that's not just me. I mean, that's the structure of this phenomenal school district that we have here.
The discussion I had with Coach Heslop, Chief Heslop, was simply that when you look at all said and done, whether it's in the classroom or whether it's theater or band or football or baseball or softball or volleyball or any of them, it really is to build a better rounded person.
Absolutely.
So that Chief Heslop doesn't have to deal with them later on, right?
You know, in his professional setting, right? That's absolutely, absolutely true. And you know, for our kids of our area, you know, we're a place, you know, and how Michigan public education kind of works when you're of declining enrollment. You know, you really are a declining district financially too, because you know, the per pupil accounting, you know, allotment and those kinds of things. What's been amazing about East China is that it always kind of reinvents itself. And the community is a huge part of that. The community directs it as they should. But we have phenomenal performing arts. Phenomenal. Vocal music, instrumental music, performing arts and theater.
Bands.
The band, the PAC Center, and just our area has generated so many unbelievable, people have reached so many heights. Grand Acats of St. Clair and Alinea in Chicago, one of the most elite restaurants on the planet. Jeff Goot, who, you know, is
Stone Temple Pilots.
He is a rock star. He's the lead singer of the Stone Temple Pilots. You know, Jacob Cronenworth. You know, Brendan Kay. You know, the doctors, the lawyers, the business leaders.
Born and raised here.
It's been great.
Okay. Thank you for coming by. It's been a great reminiscing.
Thank you for having me. You know.
And if you want to see anybody else here, we thank Andy for coming in today. And Andy's going to have the award of the first father-son in the zone number 28. The phone number is on the screen, 586-707-5811. We've got a list of a bunch more people, but if you have somebody you specifically want to see, give me a call, let me know, send me a text. Until next time, we will see you next time in the zone. Thank you.
Thank you.